All right, let's dive into one of the biggest, most enduring, unsolved mysteries of the 20th century, the vanishing act of Jimmy Hoffa. I mean, how does one of the most powerful and, let's be honest, feared men in all of America just poof, disappear into thin air?
So picture this. It all comes down to a single afternoon. It's July 30th, 1975. Jimmy Hoffa rolls up to the Moccasee Red Fox restaurant for a big meeting. A few minutes later, he's on the phone with his wife, and you can just tell he's getting annoyed, saying he's being stood up. Then he's seen just pacing around the parking lot, waiting. And then, around 2:45, a witness sees him get into a maroon Mercury. And that's it. He's gone. Never seen, never heard from again.
So the real question here isn't just what happened to him. The much bigger question is why. How on earth does a guy with this much power, this much influence, just get erased in the middle of a perfectly normal afternoon? Well, the answer is kind of complicated, because to understand his disappearance, you really have to understand the enemies he made along the way. You see, Hoffa's world was basically a battlefield. He was fighting a war on two fronts. On one side, you had the full might of the United States government, specifically the Kennedy brothers. And on the other, the American Mafia, the very same organization he helped make rich and powerful. And man, what a clash of titans this was. It's like something out of a movie. You've got Robert F. Kennedy, born into wealth, Harvard-educated, the Attorney General of the United States. And then you've got Jimmy Hoffa, a tough-as-nails union guy who fought his way up from the streets. They couldn't have been more different, and they absolutely hated each other. Hoffa called Kennedy a spoiled brat, and Kennedy saw Hoffa as a genuine threat to the country. This wasn't just business. It was a straight-up blood feud. And this quote right here, it gets to the absolute heart of it. For RFK, this was personal. It was a crusade. He didn't just see some crooked union leader he needed to prosecute. He looked at Jimmy Hoffa and saw, in his own words, pure, unadulterated evil. So when he became Attorney General, Kennedy didn't hold back. He created this special unit inside the Department of Justice that everyone called the Get Hoffa Squad. Their mission was simple, just one goal: put Jimmy Hoffa in prison. They used everything they had, wiretaps, informants, you name it. It got so intense that one of their informants even claimed Hoffa was talking about assassinating Kennedy. This was total war. So while he's battling the government, Hoffa is getting cozier and cozier with his other powerful allies, the mob. How? Well, he had personal control over the Teamsters' Central States Pension Fund. We're talking about a gigantic pile of money meant for the retirement of hard-working truckers. But Hoffa, he treated it like his own personal ATM, handing out millions in loans to his friends in organized crime. And where did all that cash go? Well, let's say you're a mobster and you want to build a shiny new casino in Vegas, like Caesar's Palace. But no legitimate bank will even look at you. No problem. Just go to Jimmy Hoffa and the Teamsters. The pension fund basically became the mob's bank. In return, the mob got to run their businesses, and Hoffa allegedly got huge kickbacks. The only people who lost out were the union members whose retirement was on the line. But you know, a house of cards like that, it can't stand forever. All that pressure from his enemies, all those corrupt deals, it was all about to come crashing down. The king of the Teamsters was about to become a king in exile. And then, bam, 1964, the Get Hoffa Squad finally gets him. It was a 1-2 punch. First, they convict him on jury tampering down in Chattanooga. That's an 8-year sentence. Then they get him in Chicago for defrauding the pension fund. That's another 5 years. All told, he was looking at 13 years behind bars. The guy everyone thought was untouchable was finally going to prison. But wait, then there's a huge twist. In 1971, President Richard Nixon commutes his sentence. Hoffa's a free man. Or is he? See, there was a catch, a really, really big one. Nixon's deal said that Hoffa was banned from any and all union activities until 1980. So it wasn't really a pardon. It was more like a trap that freed the man, but completely stripped him of his power. Now, while Hoffa was locked up, the guy he put in charge, Frank Fitzsimmons, was only supposed to be a seat warmer. But here's the thing, Fitzsimmons was way more laid back. The mob loved that. He basically let them do whatever they wanted, unlike Hoffa, who was a total micromanager. So when Hoffa gets out and expects his job back, Fitzsimmons and all of his new powerful friends basically said, no thanks. So by 1975, Hoffa is backed into a corner. He's desperate. He can't get his power back legally, so he plays his last, and as it turns out, fatal card. He goes to his old mob buddies and gives them an ultimatum.
Either you help me get my union back or I'm going public. I'll expose everything. The mob control, the pension fund schemes, all of it. And in that world, there's a name for someone who does that. A rat. And there's only one thing you do with a rat.
And that threat, that's what brings us right back to that meeting at the Machus Red Fox. So now let's take a look at the men he was supposed to meet, the prime suspects, and all the different theories about who actually pulled the trigger. So the guys Hoffa thought he was meeting were known as the two Tonys. You had Tony Jack Giacalone, a big shot in the Detroit mob, and Tony Pro Provenzano, a rival from New Jersey who used to be an ally but now hated his guts. The FBI's theory is pretty clear. Tony Jack, the local guy, set up the meeting as a trap, and Tony Pro, the bitter enemy, brought in the hitman from out of town to do the job. So, okay, who actually did it? Well, the most famous story comes from Frank, the Irishman Sheeran, who confessed on his deathbed that he was the shooter, and his story lines up with the FBI's internal memo on some key details, like the car and the guys who cleaned up. But here's the huge contradiction. The FBI has long believed the real triggerman was a guy named Sal Brigagiulio, Tony Pro's main enforcer, not Sheeran, and that's a conflict that's never been solved. And this is exactly why the whole thing is still such a mystery. I mean, over the years, the confessions have just piled up. One guy said Hoffa's buried under Giant Stadium. They searched, found nothing. Another claimed he was crushed in a car at a scrapyard. Honestly, of all the stories, Sheeran's claim about a local crematorium is probably the most believable, just because it fits the mob's playbook. Get rid of the body and get rid of it fast. So, with no body, a dozen different stories, and no real answers, the hunt for Jimmy Hoffa stopped being a normal criminal investigation. It turned into something else, a modern American ghost story. I mean, the FBI has spent almost 50 years chasing down these leads. It's almost comical. They've dug up the end zone of Giant Stadium. They've searched under a barn at a horse farm in Michigan. They dug up a field, a landfill. Every single time, they came up with the exact same thing. Nothing. And this right here, this is the bottom line. After one of the biggest, most expensive investigations in the history of the FBI, you want to know how many people were convicted for the murder of Jimmy Hoffa? A big, fat zero. Not a single one. But here's the wild paradox in all of this. While the investigation completely failed to solve the murder, it didn't exactly fail. All the evidence they gathered on the mob's influence was later used to launch this massive legal attack using RICO laws. They basically dismantled the entire corrupt system that Hoffa had helped build. So in a strange, ironic way, his disappearance actually led to the very cleanup he had threatened to expose. And without a body, you can't have a final chapter. Without a conviction, you can't have real justice. And so Jimmy Hoffa the man kind of faded away, and he was replaced by Jimmy Hoffa the myth. He's become this piece of American folklore, a ghost story that we're all still telling. Which really just leaves us with one final thought. The hitman, the bosses, all his rivals, they're all dead now. The body is almost certainly never going to be found. So you have to ask yourself, after all this time, what does justice for Jimmy Hoffa even look like anymore?